All right, welcome to another edition of Grown Folks Business on a Thursday evening. I got a couple of great guys on the call tonight, and Meryl, I'm glad you can make it, man, because
Sir.
I'm bringing up what we were discussing on the other side of things, and I think I can wedge it into tonight's conversation. I believe that I can. So, everybody out there that's listening, welcome Jay Dwayne, welcome the CEO of NC 100, Mr. Merrill Holloway. Thanks for joining us, and Don, always appreciate what you do. I know we had a couple people that had some things come up, so we may miss out on them, but we will take advantage of who's in the building. So full disclosure, I was just having a conversation with Jay about something I had been minimally going back and forth with Merrill about, and that's this new film on Netflix. They clone Tyrone. I've had some comments that I made about it today, earlier on Twitter and other things. Everybody that knows should know, that don't know should know by now that I pay heavy attention to portrayals and depictions of Black Americans in media, period. That's literally what my dissertation is going to be on. And one of the greatest purveyors of information in the form of media is film and movies. However, I'm going to stick on topic. I'm just going to fit that in to the conversation because tonight's topic is information overload and reacting before we know enough. I'm going to, like I said, wedge in some of the discussion we were having about they clone Tyrone, because this exchange of dialogue that I'm talking about, this kind of information overload, is instantaneous, is largely possible because of social media. So literally 20 minutes ago, Meryl and I were going somewhat back and forth, nothing serious, but on Facebook, and that's all possible because of social media. I'm able to say some things to the director of that film because of Twitter, so or X or whatever it's called these days. So these things exist, and they do allow for us to exchange information at a high rate of speed. But is it information overload? And in cases, we react before we know enough. Terrible, sad. For instance, right now is the young man who was the chef for the Obamas and Martha's Vineyard who drowned. I don't think we know enough to be talking about it as much as we are, and that's his name was Tafari Campbell. But of course, the more probably recognizable one of late is Carly Russell's disappearance down in a place that I used to dwell, Hoover, Alabama area. Yeah, a lot of people had something to say during the process of this thing and had opinions that were voiced and shared and just out into the sphere. And we find out that she wasn't actually kidnapped, and now everybody's got something else to say. So what is that doing to us? How are we processing all of this information that keeps coming in real time and can influence how you perceiving things one way or another? Lisa, glad you can make it. I always love to have a little feminine energy in the space, but bear with us because you're outnumbered tonight. Usually it's the other way around, but you outnumbered tonight. So, with all that being said, on top of the potential for us exchanging some ideas about one of my favorite topics, the depictions of Black people, Black Americans in film of late, we're gonna lay it on the line, lay it on the table as much as we can, and have a robust discussion. So again, I mentioned Tafari Campbell, the chef of the Obamas who died at Martha's Vineyard, drowning accident of some sort. There's been a lot of things discussed about what actually took place there, and I don't think we know enough to have an opinion yet, but it's out there. It's in the sphere. Carly Russell, we already know she's been dramified and now and victimized, and now she is just, she's the worst person to walk the face of the earth. I even throw in Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell, if you guys don't know, was standing and having a press conference, and next thing you know, he went a little quiet and was quiet for too long. It was uncomfortable, and next thing you know, somebody came and ushered him off, but we don't know what happened there, but people already think they do. So anyway, that's kind of where we're going. So easy question off the bat, I think. Should news travel slower? should news travel slower? Yeah, I think it's one of those middle of the road type things. If it's important, if it's that thing that makes your phone go bad, unless you know that there's a hurricane coming and seek shelter, that's some news that needs to travel pretty fast. But if it's stuff that is not kind of in proximity to you, which I'll get to that question a little later, can we be a little bit more patient about receiving all of this just relentless bombardment of information? So, Meryl, good to see you tonight, man. I'm glad that you could circle here and spend some time with us. So, uh, first question is to you: should news travel slower?
Well, yeah, it's really good. It's been a long time. Hadn't been on the show for a while, so it's good to see everybody. Join you guys. I just had surgery on my foot, and I am going to be stationary for the next few weeks here. So hopefully I'll be able to join y'all a little more often because I won't be on the road. Um, yeah, I don't think it needs to travel any slower. I just think that I think more people just kind of have to have a realization, or at least the people who are like like the trusted source where you get your news, if they're being responsible and saying, "Here's the information that we have so far." And I think if everything is kind of tempered and say, "Hey, here's what we know," because it's like a investigation. Like all types of information comes from here, right, left, up, down, different perspectives, different viewpoints, which is good. I just think I just think there was a responsibility on the person communicating the messages to make it clear, like, this is what we know for sure, and this is just based on our research, and like you have to make a decision for yourself. Like the news in and of itself is fine to report what you know, as long as you're saying this is what we're reporting and not this is fact. But then you have to make a decision about like what you do with that information. Are you going to stop and get that little bit of information and start making decisions and comments based off that little bit of information? Which is fine if that's what you're saying. And I'm basing my opinion off of the little bit of information I know. I have the right, or I guess I'm waiting on the or what's the word I'm looking for? Reserve the right to be able to change my mind when I get new information.
Okay, so you're kind of skewing towards that level of responsibility, uh, being held within the people who are communicating the information.
The
But
trusted
we,
ones,
yeah,
the
the
people,
trusted
yeah.
sources, and when you and I have had that discussion about have there ever been any trusted sources, and you fall more outside of, it's pretty much the same as it's ever been, and I defend some of the older ways that we received our communications regarding what's going on in our world. But that's the thing. That responsibility has to trickle down, so to speak, because what we've become able to do with technology is to get a little bit and then make a lot. And if you got a million followers, you might have dibs on 599,000 people that the news just happens to miss, and you done put your own spin on it. So that's there's some diabolicalness that can be at play here. But who knows? But great answer, Lisa. I'm gonna let you go and answer this wonderful question. And welcome, Andre. Glad you could make it. But should news travel slower?
No, not news. But I think the current state of things is people are classifying things as news that's really gossip, really inflammatory, really instigating drama, right? Yeah. So news, yes, because we need to be able to benefit from all the technology by being more aware of the things that can negatively or positively impact our lives. So the earlier and the easier access to that is great. But how do you put a muzzle on the loudest voices that are full of not news? And I don't even want to use the term that has been put into the dictionary after 2016, but it's not news. And I think in our society, we want to get away from our own lives so much that we just want to consume anything that's exciting. It's like giving us a jolt of a drug, like, oh, 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 oh. And that's just, it's annoying. because it's a distraction from anything that can add value to your life. And I wish we could be healthier and remove these distractions and have a mind to really consume things that are of substance.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you said. The dopamine shot that you get from chasing everybody's business but your own is just ridiculous at this point, and it's all right here in your pocket, right in your phone and your purse, wherever you keep your phone. It's right there waiting for you every time, every chance you get. Um, Something I think you said that I appreciated, that I hope Jay Dwayne does, because we come to him next, because Jay likes to better understand my questions sometime. And I like that you kind of drew that line between what is news and what is gossip. We've blurred that, right? And then sometimes the news turns into this gossip thing, or turns into this exaggerated conspiracy driven mess. And again, some people got a whole bunch of followers and they just hook, line, and sinker. Yeah, that's it. I knew it. And it's like, gosh, I'm all for better informed citizenry. I just don't think this is how we go about it. And I think that's what you're saying, Lisa. People need to kind of take care of themselves before they get to become inundated with all this information and don't know how to sift it and filter it. Jay Dwayne, should news travel slower?
I don't think so. I really don't think so. And I guess I'm not looking at it. I do feel like when we start talking about the inundation of information, I do think that some of us have gotten lazy in a sense of wanting the regulations that we fought to not have. I'm big on not having a lot of regulations. I do believe in a lot of freedom of speech, and I believe freedom in disseminating that information. I feel like it is our responsibility as a viewer to really say, okay, this is what I'm not going to listen to. Like, if you really look at it, so many people, like, for instance, so many people share information they don't agree with. If you don't agree with it, why are you sharing it? It's like you're boosting the algorithms, man. You're boosting the algorithms. And I find that we do things opposite of what we truly believe. I think having a varied of opinions is important. Varied spins on things are important. I think it's only unsettling when we disagree with it morally. I think it causes more of an issue. But if it's things that are more in line with what we truly believe in and we value, we don't take offense to the quasi gossip / informational sessions. We just kind of label them whatever makes us feel better in that moment. But I don't think that there needs to be more regulation on news. I think that we need more self-awareness, and we need more accountability of self and what we allow ourselves to. It goes back to that whole argument when people talk about their Facebook and everything that they see. Like, they have settings. If you don't want to see something, you literally can say snooze permanently or for 30 days. You got options, man. And I just feel like the same thing with news. If you don't agree with something, don't watch it. But it is great for those who do. I mean, if they want to have it, they can have it. So I'm not going to get too much on that. But so, no.
No, I dig it. I appreciate your observations as well. I'm sure I'm going to appreciate Andre's when I get to him in just a second. But
look how he's looking out in the distance.
I know, man.
It's a video.
He done took it all in. He ready to come back with something, Jay. He's just like, look, his hair. I see your hair growing right now, man.
I'm like, are we in a 1980s video?
Let me before Andre goes, let me push back real quick, Jay. I do think it's important that people do engage with opinions and views that you don't agree with. I think it sharpens your own. Like, I don't think you should ignore those things. And if you want to engage in something you don't agree with, a lot of times it's because you want to see if other people are just as enraged as you. So I don't know what's the best way to do it, but I do think it's healthy to constantly be trying to bring in opinions and thoughts that conflict with, how you normally, think, because like you don't grow.
No, I definitely agree with that. Yeah. But if you don't like it, nothing is saying you have to entertain this. That was my biggest point. Like, nobody's sitting there putting a gun to your head saying, share this post and give commentary about how much you hate it. I'm like, just don't share it.
I think, Jay, and this is where I was getting ready to attach this monetary thing to it. I was doing this when Lisa was talking at one point. But Jay, there's some gains that some people get from just stoking the fires of controversy. To your point, Meryl, I don't think
Jason Aldean, like that's a complete
just
fabricated, just crazy.
Oh, wow. There's now fake outrage, nonsense. There's some positionalities that I can occupy in that conversation that are worthy of unpacking. But that's one of those situations where Jay's saying it's not my type of music anyway. But if it makes it to the public square and I observe, this is where I was getting ready to go with it, Meryl. Don't speak on something you don't know enough about. I can't be critical of things if I haven't watched them. I can't be critical of things. And I say that I can't be critical out loud. You should not put anything out for public consumption when you haven't even entertained whatever the heck you're just getting moved to criticize. And that's why I believe we should wait. That's why I believe it is some of our responsibility to just take it in and relax. So no matter how fast the news travels, just sit with it for a moment and maybe go do a little bit more research before we have such strong opinions that we just run to the hills and get in our silos and know you wrong and ain't really unpacked anything. We just decided that they were, like as Jay said, you just making an opinion and passing it on and ain't even really paid enough attention to the whole situation. Andre, I hope I didn't step on your answers or your comments or anything. I see you nodding your head. So what are your thoughts? Should news travel slower?
No. No, it shouldn't. But here's why. You just said, Felton. You said, hey, no matter what the speed of the news or the communication is, like what you just said, you got to do your own research, right? I think that's what you just said. And here's why that's important. Because when I'm sitting here and looking, right, because I was trying to figure out the year, but I can't remember right now. Lisa's pretty good on this type of stuff, so she might know exactly when this happened. But has anybody ever been to the Newseum in Washington, D.C.? Because the reason I bring it up is I was a staffer up in D.C. when that place first opened. So has anybody's ever been to the Newseum? It was one of the Smithsonian's. So Felton, so if you remember when you first go into the Newseum, and I remember this from the grand opening, right? Because I was in D.C. when it first opened. The first thing they show you at that Smithsonian is news is a business, right? So no matter what you think, news has a particular role. It is a business. They are selling something. They want you to get riled up. It's a business. I don't know the way to say it. It's a for-profit business. That's what news is. And so let's fast forward to 2023, right? I'm really not sure it's any different. It's just the mechanism one. So when you do that clickbait on the internet or whatever, they're selling ads, and Lisa didn't want to say fake news, but we know what she's talking about, right? It's still a business. It has not changed. But what I was sitting here trying to think about is, so before the day, of instant information and stuff like that, I remember being in the house and listening to parents or grandparents talk about things, and the neighbors come by. We're still sort of passing it, right? Can that get to 500,000, as you said, or 1 million people like that? No, but I'm still not 100% sure that even if it was misinformation back then, that misinformation still didn't travel. Maybe not as quickly, but I'm just not sure. But I guess my point is, news is a business, and speed it up, slow it down, or whatever. But the key is what Felton said. No matter what you hear, you got to do your own research and figure out what's really going on. If you don't do that, you're doing yourself a disservice. I don't believe anything. But you got to look into it on your own. That's my point. But if you haven't been to the Newseum, please go. And they do a really good job of explaining the business side of what most people consider to be the news.
Yeah, I appreciate you putting that on the table, Andre. I think I stepped in there when I was up there with some kids one year, some YMCA kids, but I don't know if we went through. But I remember that existing. Hey, go to DC and just wander around and hit some of those Smithsonians. You will learn a lot about this country. So much is preserved and preserved very well for us to go and take in if we so desire. But my undergrad was in media studies, and Andre, that was a big part of what we discussed at certain points in times. The sensationalism that is at this point has been heightened. It's damn near a requirement. And Meryl, that goes into what you and I discussed when we're talking about who's giving us our news and information. There are too many sources now. We've jumped the shark on, it used to be the big three: ABC, CBS, NBC. Now we got CNN. CNN came, Fox came, MSNBC. So you have so many different people that are purveyor of information that is going to be skewed towards whatever they're trying to make sure they get out, and who's going to pay for those sponsorships and ads on their network. So who's watching? We got to keep people watching. So yeah, Andre, I appreciate you bringing it into the fold. That's important. But we're talking about this thing called social media as well now. Wow, it's a different type of monster there. There's something we have to acknowledge that is being communicated in that space, which brings me to my next question. So would we benefit from our news and social media being more focused on local affairs? So jump the shark. Yeah. Fonzie, jump the shark. That's in the chat, guys. He said I said something about jump the shark. Yeah, a lot of things jump the sharks these days. Fonzie was just the first one. So would we benefit from a more localized approach to how we get our information, whether it's social media or whether it's the local news, taking precedent over this instant ability to just find out what happened in Arizona 5 minutes ago? Would it benefit us more from understanding what happened right down our street and what's going on right down the block, and be more inundated with that than this national, just that sensational button has to be pushed almost every minute of every day, and it may not be in any proximity to you? So would we benefit more? This was something we discussed, and it was put on the table at a training I attended last week in Asheboro, leadership training, and it was brought to our attention, like, how can we get people more civically engaged? And hey, it would make sense if they knew more about what the heck was going on in their neighborhoods and in their cities than what Cardi B had for lunch. So that's the question. Will we benefit, or how will we benefit from being more locally focused? Lisa, I'm coming to you first because you're very active in the community, and I think in our local community, and I think you would benefit from more people knowing what you're doing as opposed to some other hip hop star, what they're struggling with. So go ahead, Lisa.
First, I want to say thank you, Meryl, for your news traveling slowly to me about one of my favorite country stars when you just mentioned Jason Aldean. And I was like, what about Jason Aldean? So news traveled a little slow, but while you was talking, I was kind of multitasking, and I Googled it, Jason Aldean. So thank you for that. So I got to get up to speed after the show. Thank you. So yes, this is interesting, because when you're trying to encourage people to know for themselves something, or to investigate how they can better serve themselves instead of crying foul all the time, like, it's there. And I often, to some people's amusement, say, well, if you can Google how to shake it fast and drop it low, you can Google where to vote, right? If you can find out how to, put the twisted things in your hair, you can find out, where this person stands on this, that, or the third. I don't think we're holding people accountable for where they're choosing to invest their time. And we may be making things too easy. And then and I'm talking about myself too, because sometimes I don't feel like teaching. Like, I just don't feel like it today. But most of the time, that's not me, because those of you who've seen me engaging know I have a big mama style. And I think we need to do more of that, and saying, well, you look like you got some nice shoes on your feet. How long you have to stand in line for that? While you're standing in line, go to this place or go to that place. And then finding points of reference that can touch people, right? So I remember during election season last year and during early voting, being at one of the rec centers, and 6 young Black men, like, they got the ball in the hand and they got their slides on and some shoes. And I was like, oh, you here to vote early? They're like, do what? Like, They didn't even see the 5 million signs. And so I took about 5 minutes to say, well, you know, whoever you put in office decides how much tax gets put on those slides, right? They decide the hours that this rec center is open. You kind of want to put somebody in office that's going to want to have this rec center open a certain amount of hours. That takes time because everybody's not exposed to a Felton or a Merrill or Jay Dwayne. I don't know, how engaged you are yet, Andre, but everybody don't have this level of exposure. So I think we as more informed citizens, and I'm not even fully informed, right? That's why I'm out here and I'm still with my eyes like a deer in a headlight, like, what? That's out here. Let me have some more. But we have to take some of this time to give to other people who otherwise have no framework. You don't know what you don't know. So instead of doing a lot of, cracking a whip, for lack of a better term, saying shame on you, we can pause and think ourselves, how can I connect with this person? How can I connect with an 18-year-old and I'm 52, right? So making space for them and accepting that they're not where we are. And even it's some 45-year-olds and I'm like, wait a minute, what? But get out of my judgy seat and try to welcome people into the fold. I don't like it. I don't like a lot of the stuff, but I got to get out of my judgy seat and see how can I reach people to help them better be equipped to participate in the development of their own lives.
So in essence, you believe it would be a net benefit, but it's still going to take, as it does, even though we don't have this localized sense of our news, it's still going to take people that are a little bit more informed and a little bit plugged in, touching those people in the communities to get them motivated to participate in the body politic in some type form of fashion. And I think we suffer also from the local media is being their ability to massage messaging. And Lisa, you were with me on a couple of occasions when I was campaigning, and I would say certain things that were specific to the Black American community, the southeast side of Greensboro, and they would either not make the news or they would be chopped up in a way to lessen the message I was trying to convey. So
Can I give you a good, oh my goodness, a perfect example of this? So locally, our police chief had a public statement, and someone submitted to put something on a Facebook group that I manage, and they said in the post, well, the police chief just admitted that they can't solve violent crime, but we gave them $17 million, and then they go down yada yada yada. So I told the person, I said, well, I declined your post, and let me tell you why. I said, because you left out a lot of the stuff. Whatever I manage is going to provide informed information. He did say that. And he also said, community cannot solve violent crime alone. He said, it takes all of us. Oh, so you're trying to silence me. Well, take it however you want to take it. But whatever's going to be connected to me, it's going to be so people can make an informed decision. And that wasn't informed. So thank you for bringing that part out, because that even people who claim to have the best intentions, but we've got to stand firm on what we believe is right.
Yeah, context matters, and I think that's the if you don't want to read the whole thing, then you still might not be in the position that makes sense for you to comment on. So get the full context before you just decide to say, oh, I don't like this part, so I'm gonna say something about it. That is research. That's one of the first rules of research, and you can't just take out what makes you feel like you're gonna make your argument if that ain't clearly what the person said. There's something that's not genuine about that. Coming to you next, Jay. What are your thoughts on the importance of localized approach to social media news? What being important locally means?
Yeah, I don't feel like it needs to be regulated like that either, because a couple of things happen. This is how those tunnel visions happen and how these silos happen in a lot of instances where people think that, well, this doesn't happen in my neighborhood, so it's not important to me. I think we need those collective experiences to see that, for us to realize that there are certain shared experiences that happen globally. And there's certain educational things that happen from these experiences that are just internationally viewed from that lens. Like the prime example, people talk about the Black Lives Matter movement, but the fact that you had people in Finland coming together who don't have that 99.9% Finnish had a Black Lives Matter rally, not because they have that in their community, it's because they recognize it shouldn't happen in any community. So those type of things are important to happen in a lot of places. And then I can tell you from a business standpoint, people don't want you until somebody else wants you. So when I was in South Carolina, nobody in South Carolina was paying me no attention. I brought my little black self to North Carolina. Now South Carolina want me. Now, when people see me doing work in South Carolina, they be like, well, we need to get you in North Carolina. People just are like that. It's like, oh, well, so-and-so wanted it. It must be good all of a sudden now. So I see the business side of it. I see the social dynamic side of it. And I think it's just healthy to kind of have a world perspective and a world view from that. Because if you really think about it, there were shows that encouraged us to travel, that encouraged us to see things from different perspectives that even happened when we were young. I think it's a wonderful thing to have those type of exposure. But here I am going back to, I think it's an accountability factor. I honestly feel like certain people who get on social media and complain, so certain people who talk about how everything is poison and all of this, stay in your box and go into your house and just live that way. If it's so bad out here, go where you feel safe and leave us the hell alone. Let us watch this trash and figure it out. But if you really don't want it, you don't have to deal with it. And I don't know, maybe that's a generational, I don't know what that is, where people feel like I have to entertain things I don't want. And I just don't understand that dynamic. Like, if I don't want to do something, I'm not going to do it. And if I don't want to read something, I'm not going to read it. I don't care how great you say it is or how much I need to. So I just don't understand poor self-management and how that becomes a social responsibility. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I get that hill you are fighting on right now. I dig it. I don't dispute the fact that we have to have some self-awareness in what we're exposing ourselves to. And if we really don't have a dog in the fight, then why is it that critically important to you? But I will say, in terms of how we're discussing, and I totally give a lot of credence to understanding what's going on in the world and actually allowing for things to be changed on a socially humanitarian scale based on what you can learn that's going on elsewhere. I'm with you all the way on that, Jay. That is a great observation. I think the imbalance that I was trying to highlight and that Lisa was identifying with is the one that is more focused on the places you travel within your daily life and you being more enamored with some of that world stuff. And it could be the lesser important world stuff, Jay, because I agree, man. The fact that what happened to George Floyd, elevated Germany and some places in other places in Europe that reacted to, viscerally to what was happening to another black man in America was amazing. But we still, and I'm not going down this rabbit hole, but we still lost a moment there because the news cycle reported it in a way that it did not remain focused on the primary population that is impacted by those behaviors. It's fascinating to witness. And the levels of to better understand that, I think, just depend on, as you stated, Jay, what you paying attention to, how responsible are you for what you take in. Go ahead, you had a response.
Well, and I just take it from a personal standpoint. If I focused on my localized news, for instance, I would have never connected with y'all. And even advocacy for that matter, like the stuff that go on in the southwest suburbs of Raleigh, it's a little different. It's a totally different. And even talking to my children, their experiences are different than a total Wake County perspective. And I just feel like limiting that can also limit access to development. And also, like I'm saying, everybody that I'm really close to do not live locally with me, and the resources that I utilize are not really locally either. So it's so many benefits that would have been shut off to me had I just sat around here in the southwest suburbs of Raleigh.
No doubt, and definitely not discouraging networking. That's a big part of what I do, Jay. You know that, and there's just so much value in going outside of your area. And we're gonna talk about silos in a different way. And we're not too far apart on how we're discussing this, but do not think that anything that you're saying is not resonating and should not resonate to everybody listening. Yeah, it's important to get outside of your space and your local areas. Just that point of understanding why the traffic light that needs to be there isn't there. That's a totally local affair. Why you're paying more over here for this and less over there for that, that's a local affair. That's kind of the lines that we're blurring, but I think we all understand each other. Andre, coming to you real quick, man. What are your thoughts on the importance of focusing on local affairs with our news and social media?
So I think back to something I learned as an undergrad political science major, which is if all politics are local, and I'm sure everybody on this call has heard that before, if all politics are local, then in theory, shouldn't more of our information be as well? Because it helps you make informed decisions about local matters that directly impact you. But then, and it's something that Jay Dwayne said that I was thinking about when he said it, because I just don't know, Felton, if it's as easy as saying, hey, if this doesn't concern me or if this doesn't concern you, stay in your house. Because there are certain things that permeate a lot of what we do, even if we're not trying to pay attention to it. It's everywhere, and it's everywhere intentionally, all right, for whatever reason. So I do think it's sort of harder or easier said than done. But back to your specific question, I think there should be more focus on the local, because then you can help determine where that traffic light is put in, how long that wreck stays open, et cetera, et cetera. But on the other side, I have to admit, when the George Floyd tragedy happened, a week later I was on the flight to Minneapolis, St. Paul, because I wanted to be out there and experience it. So I don't know, because that's obviously that wasn't local, right? I was in Atlanta. So I don't know, Felton. I guess I see it. I guess I see it different ways. So I guess in that way, it just sort of matters the context or what we're sort of talking about at the time, which I know is not good, right? You should be definitive one way or the other. What's important, but yeah, I don't know. That's one. I guess I see both sides of it, but I 100% and strongly understand that politically, 85% of your news should be on local stuff. It should help educate people on what's going on around them that impacts them directly and immediately. That's my opinion.
No, I totally, and it's respectable across the board to be informed, maybe on a national scale, if not a global. But yeah, we have to, I think, recalibrate to a degree and just find a healthy balance. And Jay, I think that's applicable to everything you're saying, Andre, as well, and everybody coming to you next, Meryl. But I think we have to find that healthy balance. Meryl, your thoughts? How critical or how important is local, whether it's social media or news?
Yeah, no, I appreciate everything everybody had to say. I think, and I don't know enough about what happens in other countries, like say China, where there's a lot of restrictions on like how much information you can get or how much social media. Maybe they have better civic engagement. Maybe the people are more informed. But I wouldn't agree with there being restrictions on like the information that comes in. But proportionally, I believe like, if there were ways for local information to kind of be whatever the algorithm is, like if there was a way to make sure like what you see is local, but you still have access to all the other things. So like Jay said, if you don't have perspectives and thoughts and all the potential outcomes from decision making that happen in some state or some country, I think you're doing yourself a disservice. I felt, I didn't have the privilege. A lot of us didn't have the privilege of having access to the internet as young people. And so I feel like we were not, I feel dumber, just because we didn't have enough information. And like all the stuff that you start to learn that you didn't know about because of the internet is super important. But I think the key is how do you instill media literacy as a value or something that we invest in our schools and just other spaces or community organizations that like have people's trust. If you can get people to have the discipline of, okay, take in message and then take a look at who sent the message. And is there any reason that this person that sent me the message will want me to think X, Y, or Z? Then you can take in as much information as you can, as you can find if you have that discipline. Because I do think 40 years ago, 30 years ago, because people didn't have these other distractions to be able to kind of see what's going on somewhere else, they were more engaged in their own communities. And you saw it, especially in Reedsville in Rockingham County that I can speak to, and I'm sure there's a lot of places, the people who are part of the make the decisions in our government, it is very homogenous. And it was not that way 30 years ago, 40 years ago, because folks didn't have that place to escape. I'm living in this really tough situation. Instead of me dealing with the local situation, let me dream and think about what it might look like to live here or have this type of career or that type of stuff. So that leads to you not really wanting to be invested in your community because you're probably going to leave or you want to leave. So I don't, no restrictions, but definitely there just has to be more of an investment and more attention, time, resource, time, talent, and treasure to help people be truly, truly like media literate. And if you do that, then it doesn't matter how much information you have.
I completely agree with that, especially that final part, that media literate aspect. Everybody has heard me talk about emotional intelligence in this space, and that's a topic that I'll always revisit here. Being emotionally intelligent, media literate. Hey, that's one that we need to evoke a little bit more as well, because you can easily be swayed or influenced by what somebody's telling you is important for you to know, or somebody's telling you is something that you need to be aware of and watch out for this. Media is a powerful tool, and that's a big piece of the puzzle that I'm trying to solve, especially in regards to how Black Americans are depicted in all forms of media. So you guys know that already. So I'm going to hit this last question, and it's going to deal with silos to a degree. Jay, you brought that up in this question that I'm going to ask. Is going to deal with that to a degree, but I'm going to wedge in something that Meryl and I were discussing a little bit, and Jay and I were discussing on the way in. You don't have to have seen the film They Clone Tyrone. Meryl and I may go a little bit more detailed since we both have. But with this question I'm going to ask about the silos, I'll wedge in that film and any other things that I think deal with portrayals of Black Americans in the greatest purveyor of information, media, and in this case, films and such, with the way that information can be received, debated in the public sphere, but these silos at points can block out challenges to certain ways that things should otherwise be discussed. So while I may not have the most positive opinion of it, that shouldn't limit interaction. As you were discussing earlier, Meryl, that's kind of healthy. But we are in a place where you can run to your silo. And if you don't want to hear nothing but the good stuff, then that's all you got to hear. I'm a minimal social media guy, but I'll be in spaces and I'll say what I say because of what I believe and what I've paid attention to. And I can get kicked out of the conversation. I can get ran off by all of these people who just have made up their mind that I'm hating and also don't want to have that debate. Lisa, some of that discussion that you were just talking about earlier, that ability to interact and just, well, this is what I think, this is what you think, and we can still talk and hash it out. Yeah, our silos are pretty protected. So I'll start with you, Andre. How detrimental are the silos we receive our information through? How detrimental are they to a balanced or informed society? So I feel like something is definitely being missed by the siloing of how we communicate, especially in the social media space.
I can't agree more. It's devastating. Because when we allow ourselves to be placed in these silos, we lose proper perspective, compassion for other points of view, understanding. It puts you in a position where you just won't accept any other reality except yours. And to be honest with you, Felton, I think it even goes past to even the news. I know we're talking about the news, but so many other things. People put themselves in silo, but just keeping it just to the news, you know, you name it, BET News, Fox, CNN, headline, whatever. They all sell their perspective, but how much are we selling ourselves short when we only listen to that one perspective? How do you really truly understand your fellow human, right? Who may be, getting their information from that other silo, right? Oh, we can't possibly see the eye to eye. No, there's some fundamental things we all look for. There's fundamental aspects of just humanity that it shouldn't be dictated by what side of the aisle you're on or what news channel I watch at 8 p.m. And unfortunately, that's not where we are right now. So to answer your question, I think it's devastating. I think it's torn communities, people, maybe even this country apart. We'll see. In the next 2 years, we'll see how bad that is. I think there's probably very few things I can name that's probably been proven to be a worse disservice to our society today than the departmentalizing, the siloing of just everyday just society, period, overall. And I'm not sure how we get around it, Felton, but maybe that's a topic for next week. But that's my answer. Devastating is my answer too.
I appreciate that. I'm going to wedge in another aspect of this thing, and as I go to the next people, I talk about it freely. This siloing, there's silos within the silo. Such is the case, in my opinion, with the Black community and how things are reported or celebrated. And it's troublesome that we seemingly have come to lack representatives that actually push the needle and challenge some of this stuff in a way for the public to consume. And a real quick case in point, Magic Johnson just became part owner of the Washington Commanders. He owns 4%, if that. And it's a thing that's been done before. Jay-Z owned a low percentage of the Brooklyn Nets. Hell, Magic Johnson owned a low percentage of the LA Dodgers. But they're propped up as if they're the primary person. And look at this. And then you have a young man, Jaylen Brown, I think is his name. I don't watch much basketball anymore. Boston Celtics signed a $350-some million contract. He wants to bring Black Wall Street to Boston. Why is that his responsibility? But he's selling. Oh, look what he's saying he's gonna do. Ain't this awesome? It's not his responsibility. There's a lot of people that are culpable for what took place in the Black community. And where is their buy-in? Where's their point? Where's the government saying, hey, wait a minute, we need to do something? But where is the person to respond to him with that? And why is that not even highlighted? Because the silo within the silo drowns that out. So those are things how I'm interpreting this silo thing we're discussing. So Lisa,
real quick,
go ahead, Andrew.
And maybe not tonight, but one time, can we talk about exactly what is Black Wall Street? But it's not for tonight. But brother, just please put that on your list, because I would love for us to have that conversation at some point.
We'll do it. And it's a mythical, magical place, like Wakanda. Sadly. So because that dollar was the same dollar, right? I had that conversation the other day, Andre. The black dollar was it was the same dollar. The black dollar went and paid for private schools that Black folks couldn't even attend, supported colleges, and you paid taxes for things that you couldn't even tap into or access. It was the same dollar. The dollar was always integrated. It's just that we couldn't share public spaces. But there's mythical magicalness about this dollar, and it is a deeper conversation, Andre. We'll have it, man. Good idea. Lisa, coming to you. So, give me your ideas and thoughts on whether these silos are detrimental.
So I'll piggyback off of Jay Dwayne's beginning statements that we need access to a myriad of exposures. And so the short answer is yes, because what you feed is what's going to grow. So if you're only getting fed one perspective, one exchange, one idea, one set of community, whether some may think it's good or some may think it's bad. And just like Meryl said, it's good to engage the alternate perspective, because you can, number one, you can firm up your own foundation with saying, yeah, I thought that was crazy before, but now I know it's crazy. Or you can you can have your own aha moments and shift away from both perspectives into a new vein. So I don't think operating in silos are healthy, and I think those that like silo-ness have an unhealthy way of wanting to experience a non-life, because you cannot experience life without growth and exposure. There you go. So keep that one short and sweet.
No, thank you, Lisa. Great observation. You got to be challenged in this. You can't just let that thing turn to a piece of cement inside of this noggin. You gotta keep it, absorbing and spongy and getting wrinkles. You got to challenge yourself. Like the great statement, Lisa. Yeah, I think the better informed you are, the more solid you can become in an opinion. But you should never just resign yourself there without, allowing for somebody to challenge you. I love what Meryl was saying. Jay, coming to you next. You had some comments already about silos. You brought the word up before I got to the question. So, are they detrimental? What are your thoughts on these silos?
Oh yeah, they're definitely detrimental. Like I always tell people, the most closed-minded person is an open-minded person anyway. Because as soon as they tell, I consider myself to be an open-minded person. Yep, you're already closed-minded because you already put it in a box. And I feel like people in their silos, they connect with these people. And a lot of them get with cheerleaders. They don't get with people who are going to challenge them, kind of like what Meryl was saying. They don't really get with people who are going to challenge their opinion. They really get with people who are going to create some type of buy-in. And so it's good to always be around people who are going to interrupt and disrupt any level of, comfortability when it comes to just assuming it's that one way. And I say that because for some strange reason, people still struggle with understanding that humanity itself is fluid. How I feel today, I may not feel tomorrow. And so I may have a strong conviction today, but I may meet a Lisa or a Meryl who changes that whole conviction the next day. So now I'm more empathetic to when I meet a Felton. I mean, it's just like, that doesn't mean I was less genuine yesterday. That doesn't mean I was less important yesterday. But if you get in these silos, you got to it's like you pledge allegiance to this one level psyche, and you got to keep it up within that community. And yes, there are status quos within that community, and we do have to have a deeper conversation about that. But yes, I think it's detrimental to just have a siloed perspective and a siloed backing all the time.
Yeah. I figured you felt that way based on some of your earlier statements. But yeah, I think it is a growth mindset that benefits us all. And that's literally, I think, what you're speaking of. When you got that fixed mindset and can't nobody tell you nothing, and all you want to hear is what you already know, and you don't want to learn no more. You just introduce new ideas, and it's like nah. So yeah, that growth mindset is real and necessary. Meryl, I saved you for last for intentional reasons. If you would like to touch on why they cloned Tyrone or whatever the heck it was. We can, and I'm not knocking the film. It wasn't bad. It wasn't bad, but again, the silos that we're discussing could easily be observed in some of my interaction on Twitter, more so because, man, nobody want to hear that. Oh, it's great. It's the best thing ever. Go ahead, man.
Yeah, we don't have to be in lockstep. I think that's the hard thing about community. And when we talk about, sharing like this affinity and this skin that we're in and this heritage that should unite, for all of us on this call, there's that community, but then there's these other identities that we wear or secondary marginalizations, and people kind of get stuck into, playing oppression Olympics, or, I'm your brother, I'm your sister, as a Black person, but maybe if I decide, if I am fighting for, trans rights or or something else like that, and I'm Black, then we lose that part. We forget that connection of like this other connection because we tend to be in silos. So, I mean, I don't know. I do agree that we like in particular with that movie, right? So like we can discuss the movie, we can have opinions about it, and it would be a very sad society if we weren't allowed to kind of like have discourse and disagree about it. So I just wish that it's, again, the media literacy, the emotional, intelligence, all those things, but we just have been cultivated in a culture where it's not profitable. It's profitable to have people be in silos because like these news stations, there's an audience that they have to get, and they have to be able to predict, I'm going to reach this many people. And there are some networks, we can name them, that profit off of like outrage and like who can be the most ridiculous and get people riled up so they get distracted from what these issues are that could really unite us all, whether it's or it's poverty or lack of access to healthcare. But I'm gonna get you mad about, I don't know, the Barbie movie or whatever it is. And so because it's just profitable, and for people in spaces where they are in silos and they've been operating that way their whole lives, what's the incentive for them to think different? Once they see, there's an example of when I took an opportunity to like get out of my comfort zone or to take on another point of view, and it benefited me somehow. Until that happens, people are going to just stick to what they're used to. I'm used to being angry. I'm used to blaming these folks for my issue, blah, blah, blah. And that's just how I'm holding. My daddy did it. My grandma did it. My uncles did it. Until there's a crystal clear example of where that benefits you. Because like we all tend to make decisions based on, well, not all, but a lot of folks tend to make decisions off of what's best for their own self-interest. I don't know what you do.
Beautiful observation. The benefit, the net gain, is literally an acknowledgement of a shared humanity and an understanding that whatever your lowest moments have been, whatever your highest moments have been, can be shared with someone who has nothing connected to where you originate from, that is not from your silo. And that's the thing, Mayor. We materialize so much. We got so much emphasis on material gain that, man, how fulfilling is it to actually share time with somebody that you had no clue that the time could be shared so wonderfully well? That's value. That value is more so than that ring that made it from ancient Rome to current days that's worth $1 trillion. Man, the relationships that you build over the time that you inhabit this earth and the authenticity of them is that's where the value is. So yeah, man, that's a great observation that people just resign themselves to the limitations and what might feel good and don't test the waters of connectivity. So yeah, I think that's highly important. And it's a good note to end on, a good observation to end on. I appreciate you guys hanging out. This is always a wonderful space and place. Meryl, now that I know, might have you for a week.
Oh, absolutely.
Next week's show already was formulated because of something Julia brought up, and I'm going to incorporate it being a time that Lisa, Jay, yourself, Julia and Greg should be back for it. Talk about what you guys do in the community. So it will be something that highlights T, that highlights Love is a Parable, that highlights NC 100, that highlights the work that Julia and Greg do. I know they did food banking and they had some other endeavors they were doing that related to church. Andre, if you have something, and that doesn't mean don't come next week. It just means if you have something, I want that to be the exchange, because the show is going to be about utopia. And I think that's the pursuit here. And I don't think there's anything wrong with pursuing it. So we'll talk about it next week. You have something you wanted to throw in, Meryl?
Oh, no, that's a great. That's okay. Yeah. I'm looking at my schedule. Yeah, I don't have anything. I'm good.
All right, so that's gonna be on the table next week. Andre, you've given the pointer to make sure I bring into the equation discussion about Black Wall Street, and Jay believes in Wakanda, so I throw that out there too. So we'll make that a conversation we have in the next few. And Jay said we that means next week is gonna be a fundraising show, so we're gonna Don, we're gonna have to get a little clock on the bottom and something that calculates the money as it comes in. It's gonna have to be like Jerry Lewis used to be on the phones and everybody talking about, and then
put up our cash tags, please.
There it is. Yeah, we'll have it produced.
Hey Jay, you might have to sing next week.
There it is.
You remember Lou Rawls used to come out there? Lou Rawls used to come out there and get it in, boy. I can't remember the song, but he was singing every year. Hey, look, y'all have a wonderful night.
But to Andre's point, I'm gonna try my best to see, can I get, being in the Triangle, there is a very large movement here with the Black Wall Street movement, and so like the events, and I'm gonna try to see if I can find somebody that is going to organize for next week. Yeah.
Hey, for that show.
To get a perspective of like why it's important. I mean, there's a lot of historical reasons why in Durham in particular, like we celebrate and talk about Black Wall Street. So if I can find a couple of those people, bring those folks.
Absolutely. I'll say this. I went to Central. Andre, you'll take some, I think you'll take some understanding from what I'm going to say really quickly. And it's just because Meryl brought it up that, this idea of Black Wall Street existed in Durham, but it was relegated to a concentrated few of the Black citizens that inhabited the area, Merritts and Spaldings. And observation that I make that we'll unpack, and if not next week, the week after, probably the week after, we'll do something specific. But you can bring those, let them know about next week as well, because that utopia thing is in that conversation. But man, where is that wealth? That's the question, right? There's still wealthy people who are associated with the founding of Duke, and those were contemporaries. Merritt was a contemporary of Duke. That's how he got some of the game and knowledge about business. But where are the rich Merricks at? You know what I mean? So Black folks were made a contagion of wealth, to quote Yvette Carnell, which I think is a wonderful way of framing it, made a contagion of wealth. So it's hard to keep. It's hard to pass that thing on, that legacy, that Black Wall Street. It disappeared for a reason. It wasn't just about the violence either. It was a lot of factors that contributed to it. So we'll talk about it, man. Love the idea of us unpacking that in this space. See you guys next week. I look forward to it. Lisa, turn the lights on. Y'all have a wonderful night. Take care, and take care out there. Appreciate y'all spending the time.